My name is Umid Umarov, and today I will present the article Gender Issues in News Coverage, written by Margarita Gertsimaslai. I selected this article because gender representation remains one of the most important topics in the media studies, and news does much more than just simply report events. It influences how people understand society, power, and equality. This article examines how women participate in journalism and how they are represented in news coverage, making it highly relevant to our course, Media Diversity in Society. The main focus of this article is gender inequality in journalism. The author argues that gender is socially constructed, meaning that society creates expectation about the roles of men and women rather than biology determining those roles. Also, more women have entered journalism over the years. They still face significant barriers. They are less likely to hold leadership positions, more likely to cover so called soft news, and remain underrepresented in news stories themselves. The article also emphasizes that news media are not neutral. They both reflect existing inequalities and actively shape public perceptions about gender. The purpose of the article is to examine both women's participation in news production and the way women are represented in news media. Several important concepts are discussed here. First is gender as a social construction, which means that ideas about masculinity and femininity are created by society. Another concept is gender essentialism, the belief that men and women naturally have different abilities because of biology. The article also explains intersectionally, showing that gender interacts with race, class, nationality, and other identities. And finally, it introduces ideas such as the glass ceiling, which limits women's career advancement, and symbolic annihilation, where women are ignored or underrepresented in media. These concepts help explain why inequality continues even when more women enter journalism. The authors support these arguments using data from major international studies, including the Global Media Monitoring Project and the International Women's Media Foundation. The statistics clearly demonstrate continuing inequality. As you can see here, women produce only 37% of news stories worldwide, while men produce 63%. Women make up only 24% of people who appear or are quoted in news, and only 27% of leadership positions in news organizations are held by women. Another important finding is that only 4% of news stories actively challenge gender stereotypes. These numbers show that progress has been made, but significant inequality still exists in both news production and representation. I believe this article makes an important contribution to media studies because it combines academic theory with strong international evidence. Instead of focusing only on individual experiences, it explains how newsroom culture and institutional practices create unequal opportunities. And one of the strongest aspects of the article is its use of global research, making its conclusion relevant beyond one country. A limitation, however, is that it gives relatively little attention to non binary and LGBTQ identities, which have become increasingly important in discussion of media diversity. But overall, I agree with the author's argument that media both reflects existing gender inequalities and help reinforce them through everyday reporting practices. This article connects directly with many concepts we are studying during this course. It demonstrates that media shape public understanding through representation, and it also supports the idea of social construction, showing that gender roles are created and reinforced through culture and media. The article reflects Gramsci's concept of hegemony because traditional gender expectations become accepted as common sense through repeated media messages. And finally, it illustrates both perspectives we discussed in class. Media act as a mirror reflecting society and as a shaper influencing attitudes, beliefs, and social norms. In conclusion, this article shows that gender inequality continues to exist in both journalism and news representation. Also, women's participation has increased. They remain underrepresented in leadership positions, expert roles, and news coverage. The article reminds us that diversity in journalism is not only about fairness for journalists, but also about providing more balanced and accurate information to society. Understanding these issues helps us become more critical media consumers and encourages us to think about whose voices are included and whose voices are still missing. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.